I want to thank everybody for coming today. And oh, I see Katie's actually already dropped the task force report into the chat there. So awesome. All right. So first of all, want to welcome all of you to today's talk. And where Katie is going to actually be going over the organic task force report. But before we get started, I want to make sure that we do our land acknowledgement. And so we acknowledge that there are 46 treaties and other agreements that cover the territory now called Ontario, where the Organic Council of Ontario's membership resides. We are thankful to be able to work and live in these territories. We are grateful to the First Nation, Métis, and Inuit people who have cared for these territories since time immemorial and who continue to contribute to the strength of Ontario and to all communities across the province. So if you would like to share your land acknowledgement of where you're located, we recognize that we actually have a national group here today. We have some people signed up all the way out to BC here. So feel free to drop your land acknowledgement into the chat and share with us about the land that you're in relation with. Okay, next slide here. So a little bit about the Organic Council. If you're not familiar with us, thanks for joining this webinar for the first time. And for those of you that are back again, we really appreciate it. So we are a not-for-profit industry association that is representing everyone in the organic value chain in Ontario. And that means from the farmers with their fingers in the dirt all the way to the people that are eating the organic food. And it includes policymakers, people that put, breakfast foods on your shelves, and those people that prepare all of those. There's many steps in the organic value chain, and all of you are very important. And basically, I think we probably are encompassing everyone in this audience today as part of that organic value food chain. So we're have a very important role to make sure that we support you, but also the education piece, and that's why we have Katie joining us today. Next slide. Oh, okay, that's actually for afterwards. So ignore that slide, and now let me introduce Katie. That's what I thought it was, but Sammy's doing the slides for me, so I wasn't sure. So Katie has actually joined us for so many webinars. You are such an integral part of organics in Canada, and we're just so happy to have you joining us today. So Katie, she's the Director of Policy and Research, and she is passionate about restoring landscapes and ecosystems and building food secure, resilient communities through soil regeneration. Previously, she was the programs manager at LandCorp, a nonprofit organization advancing soil health in the United States through federal policy, soil health risk modeling research, and education. She's also the co-founder of Rainmaker Enterprise, a refugee-led organization installing solar-powered water systems for health, food security, and climate adaptation in South Sudan. She serves on the boards of Rainmaker and the Canada-Africa Partnership Network, where she previously worked as a network coordinator and co-launched the Africa Climate Action Initiative, supporting civil society organizations in promoting agroecology as a climate solution. Katie holds an MA in Conflict, Security, and Development from King's College London and a BA in Peace, Conflict, and Justice Studies from the University of Toronto. She also coordinates, because she has so much extra time after all of that, Bikes for Climate Hub and distributing repaired bicycles under Transform TO's Neighborhood Climate Action Grant Program in North Ontario. We are so happy to welcome you here today, Katie. And if you want to go ahead and get started, share your slideshow. We're all excited to hear what you have to say today.
Great. Thank you, Erica. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning. I know some are joining from other parts of the country. So thank you so much for the opportunity to come and talk about our new, relatively new still, Organic Task Force report. And thank you, Erica and the team at OCO, Sammy, Courtney, and everyone else for putting on so many educational events and conversations for the community. I've been joining in as many as I can. It really feels like a community building activity. So appreciate that. And I'm in Hamilton, so I'm on the traditional territories of the Erie, Neutral, Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, and Mississaugas of the Credit First Nations. And yes, it is a little bit chilly here today too, but there's no snow and the sun is out, so that's nice. So I'm going to share the slides and try to give you a briefing on this for about 25 minutes or so, and then have the second half of the meeting for discussion. So please let me know when you're seeing the screen in full. Okay, thank you so much. So yes, so I work with Canadian organic growers. So this is COG's 50th year. Many of you will be familiar with COG as has roots in Ontario, but now at this point is definitely working nationally across Canada, working with organic and ecological growers across the country, and then also working with partners including OCO and many others on supporting an organic food and farming system in Canada and the transition to a larger version of that. So I'm here to talk today about our new Organic Task Force report, which is titled Cultivating the Organic Opportunity, Economic and Environmental Impacts of Organic Agriculture and Policy Recommendations for Canada. So just a bit more about COG and where we fit. Since the beginning, we've been focused on providing educational materials. So some of you will be familiar with our handbooks and the books that we've published over the years on organic growing, gardening, and production. And more recently, we've continued those activities, but in different ways. So we run extension programming. We have a large regenerative organic transition program across the prairies right now. And we also run some courses, including on organic vegetable seed production now. And we're also getting into training for agronomists and educators on organic management and transition. We also, and my area of work is in terms of working on national policy and research. And also, so that includes having convened this project and other similar research projects, but also working with our other partners through what we've formed as the Canadian Organic Alliance. So this includes COG, the Canada Organic Trade Association, and the Organic Federation of Canada. And the Organic Federation of Canada itself is a federation of our regional and provincial partners. So that includes the Organic Council of Ontario. So we are all working together under one framework to try to meet our shared goals. So what is the Organic Task Force and why did we do it? So I've been working with Canadian organic growers for about 2 years. And when I started, this was our first and top priority project for us to get started on. So this is really a study about the impacts of organic farming in Canada and how that contributes on a national level to policy aligned goals. So the federal government had been working on, at the time that I started, a sustainable agriculture strategy. It hasn't been published, but it's for now continues in different ways. But basically, it was a strategy to coordinate between Agriculture Canada and Environment and Climate Change Canada on how the agriculture sector is going to meet sustainability needs and commitments that Canada has. So this includes emissions reduction goals. It also includes biodiversity commitments, and really what's the plan for agriculture to contribute to those. But also at the same time, as a cross-cutting lens within that whole process was what does the economics look like for producers? So understanding that we need to support farm profitability and resiliency to be able to address all of these other needs. So we started this study to look at what are the economic and environmental impacts and how does organic contribute to those goals. And so this is really to try to provide a summary of national impacts to federal policymakers. So that's what you'll see today. I think it's, it's possible to tailor this information in all kinds of different ways to say, okay, if you're, if you're an individual farm, what might this mean for you? Or if you're a processor or play some other role in the value chain, what does this mean for you? I think the information you'll see is really how have we summarized this information for federal policymakers, because that's what this is aiming at. And that will kind of give you a sense of why we've set it up in the way that we have. But basically, we looked at organic as a real opportunity, but one that needs some investment to grow. And so that's where we've looked at costs and benefits to farmers and government of expanding organic production. And this is all with the goal of informing policy development and program development within that. So in the federal policy context, there are a lot of priorities and needs right now that organic is aligned with and can provide a solution and opportunity to. So that includes this context of trade diversification. Economic growth is the framing that we're working within. We also might talk about economic degrowth to meet some of these other opportunities, but this is the framing we're working within. Government is focused on competitiveness and profitability, food security, and sovereignty. This creates a lot of openings for us as an organic sector to feed into and provide our own understanding of what does food security and sovereignty really look like, that kind of thing. At the same time, there's a lot of pressures on our farming sector across the country. We have, of course, trade instability and diversification needs. We have market volatility that's related to input costs as well, including inputs that rely on global markets. We have all kinds of climate extremes, including soil and biodiversity loss and the impacts from that. And this is all culminating in the need for resilient food systems and scalable ones at that. So from a federal policymaker perspective, organics is a regulated, defined, and infrastructure built around it sector. And that's what makes it a scalable solution to all of this stuff. So this is part of what our report was getting at. So sorry if this is overwhelming. There were a lot of people involved in this project. This was a project that brought together farmers and researchers. It's also important to mention that COG is a founding member of Farmers for Climate Solutions, and the task force model has been developed and used by Farmers for Climate Solutions, including to bring evidence for policy development. So we have adapted that model and used it for looking at organic agriculture. So that's why this program or this project included farmers, researchers, policy experts, and advisors from all across the country. So that includes myself. The first three are our farmer co-chairs. So one in Saskatchewan, one from Alberta, one from Quebec. So we had a little bit of just a little sliver of the diversity of the sector across the country. And then researchers looking at economic and environmental and policy impact areas. We had a couple there, the two in the middle, the one standing in front of the crop and the one beside are Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada researchers. And then we had a number of organic researchers across the country, including some real leaders on organic research. So Dr. Ralph Martin, retired from University of Guelph, founded the Organic Agriculture Center of Canada, and Andy Hammermeister right beside him is now the current director. So I think you can see a lot of people kind of coalesced around this idea that we need to centralize the information on the impacts that organic is providing and can provide, and really lay out in a bit more detail what the organic farming community needs in order to be able to meet the opportunity. The opportunity is there. So we're working in a context of an organic consumer market in Canada that continues to grow. So in 2024, the organic consumer market was almost $10 billion, so $9.75 billion, according to the numbers that are compiled by the Canada Organic Trade Association. This is up over 50% since 2019. we also have a strong global growth. So this is around the world. The organic market is now worth over $200 billion. This includes in regions that Canada is looking to diversify to. And we are set up to meet those opportunities with a number of organic equivalency arrangements with 35 countries. So it's just to say that this is a serious sector in the eyes of government, because it is also a whole global system and a whole economic system as well. So that's an entry point. It doesn't, it doesn't answer all of the questions that we need to be answered, because we also want to work on food security, domestic food security, local food systems, meeting the demand that we have in Canada with Canadian locally produced organic supply. But that brings us to the second part of this, which is that the Canadian market continues to grow, but organic production has not been growing in a way that's been keeping up with that over the last few years. So we have just 3% growth in operators between 2019 and 2023, and acreage is around about the same amount. This is across Canada, so there would be some differences between provinces and regions, but overall we have a situation of a growing gap, and consumers looking for organic products, and also processors looking for organic ingredients, and both struggling to find Canadian supply for those things. So it's an opportunity. So you have a kind of similar situation in Ontario here, where the market has grown a bit over the last few years. These are according to COTA's numbers. Ontario is the largest organic market in Canada, but the number of operators has stayed around about the same over the past few years. So we have also lots of great Ontario-based companies, including Riverside, the maker of Made Good snack brand, starting to say things like the demand is there, including from Riverside, who wants to source Canadian. We need support on the supply side to be able to keep up. So when talking to federal policymakers, this is a very clear opportunity and one that needs some support to meet. So we then bring in our research about what are the impacts of organic production according to what the research and farmer-led team came up with, and basically find organic farming as a tool for farmers and policymakers both to increase farm profitability, which is a shared goal, while also delivering strong environmental outcomes. So I'm just going to go through a little bit more detail on both areas. So starting with the economic impacts, we had, and we will share all these slides with you so you can look at the details. You can also find the details in the report, which includes the technical reports as appendices, so you can see all the calculations that were done to produce these results. But we had an agricultural economist from the University of Guelph take a look at organic cropping systems, comparing the costs of production and net returns between organic and conventional crops. You can see which ones we looked at here, mostly field crops and then a few horticultural crops. And we find, with lots of variability, but on average, higher profitability for the organic crops, 117% higher net returns on average, actually, which is very significant. A lot of this is coming from access to the organic price premium. So this is national data. I think you once again might look at this from your own situation working with it in the organic sector, and it might not look totally right, but this is a summary of national data available, and it just gives us an ability to compare and make some average and benchmark. So similar overall production costs, but of course, falling into different categories, and higher prices. And what our assumptions and the data that we have access to shows is slightly lower yields, again, with lots of variability in between. But while that's the long-term picture, we also did a modeling of what happens during the transition period. So assuming the transition period is the 3 years required before certification, during that period, we use an assumption of organic production costs, organic yields, and still conventional prices. So not access to the organic premium price to offset the costs yet. And we find from that situation high entry costs. So negative net returns for the 3-year transition period for most crops we looked at, many of which then do pay off following that. So this creates a clear risk and barrier to entry. And in other jurisdictions that we look at that are supporting organic through public policy and programs, this is an area that they focus on with programming, is subsidizing the cost of transition through whatever mechanism that might be. So we see what has been offered in Quebec, for example, has been organic conversion support, at a portion of the lost revenue basically during transition. So we have set up a similar recommendation to be provided nationally, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But the environmental impacts now to move into this area. So this is an opportunity for increased profitability for producers, while at the same time it's also lowering greenhouse gas emissions, which is a national public policy goal and international commitment. So we found in a study of all the crops you can see in the right-hand piece there, greenhouse gas emissions for the organic compared with the conventional crop to be 35% lower per acre, and also 15% lower per unit of production on average across all the crops. So this means that 35% lower per acre, but still when you factor in the yield difference, there's a smaller but still significant advantage for the organic crop in terms of greenhouse gas emissions reduction. So this is based on a global data set of almost 80 life cycle assessments that are kind of the gold standard for comparing full products in terms of their environmental footprint. So those are both kind of national and using some global data, but tailored to the Canadian situation by crop impacts. And then we also wanted to go through and do a few case studies, both to use Canadian data, look at Canadian situations, and try to do that in a few different parts of the country, and also do that on a full rotation basis. So we now then spent quite a bit of time doing 4 rotation case studies in different parts of the country. One of them is in Saskatchewan, and it's important to say this is the working farm in the 4 case studies. The other 3 are research centers. And this was within the time that we had available data, and also research centers that do this kind of comparison of conventional and organic rotations side by side, and would have data over a few years preceding. So those are the 3 that you see. Manitoba is the Glenlee Organic Long-Term Trial. So it's the longest running side-by-side organic conventional trial in Canada. The CETAB Organic Research Site in Victoriaville in Quebec. And then one in Ontario, which is the Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada Harrow Research and Development Center in Harrow. So we can basically look at the results of this, on which we chose a representative conventional and organic rotation to compare to each other, and we did the economic and emissions analysis. So these are the parts of the study we did more quantitatively, and we found similar results, or at least trends in all of the same directions, and some quite similar to our national crop-based analysis. So this basically gave the research team confidence in the conclusions that came out of what I just showed before. So it's in a sense validating the crop analysis for the Canadian situation. It's not comprehensive, but it definitely is a touch point. So the economic findings were that the organic rotations were actually 337% more profitable. And then the emissions findings were quite similar to the other ones. So 36% lower per acre, 19% lower per unit of harvested yield. So please track down your questions as we're going. I know we're going through lots of information here in short order, but you'll also be able to go back to the recording for more detail. So this is just to zoom in on the case study in Ontario. The organic rotation was 208% more profitable, and the emissions findings were pretty similar to the national, or the summary of comparisons as well. And this is a corn, soy, winter wheat rotation that they were both looking at with the organic, including some green manures. So we also look at a number of other environmental impact areas, or core impact areas that impact, of course, both environment, economics, and everything else. But we looked at these more in a literature review style. So we had someone do a literature review on the impacts of organic on soil health across the country and find overall organic systems maintaining soil health and soil organic carbon compared to conventional methods, which in some cases are actually losing soil. And we find where what they call in policy terms beneficial management practices being used. So just organic management practices or regenerative management practices, organic systems building soil. There are also a number of studies comparing biodiversity impacts and supporting generally increased biodiversity in the organic systems, which is attributed to, as you might expect, eliminating the use of most pesticides, as well as to organic farms tending to have more diverse farm landscapes and habitat retention. So I think those factors contribute into the potential for improved water quality and cycling, and then also climate adaptation and resiliency. Although studies that are set up to kind of compare organic on a systems level to non-organic on a systems level, which is what we were looking for in this case, there could be a lot more research done in these areas in Canada. In terms of energy use and efficiency, there's been some studies done on prairie trials for the most part, but they find pretty consistently lower energy use and higher energy efficiency in the organic systems. We then also, so this is this BMP term, beneficial management practice, but we drew on a thesis that had done some analysis of Census of Agriculture data, where they ask a bit of information about management practices you're using, as well as one question, which is, are you an organic farmer? Are you selling organic products? And the researcher had cross-referenced that information to find that all across the country, organic farms are using key practices that government is looking to support more of at already higher rates. So 3 times higher adoption of cover cropping. For example, there's been a lot of interest and incentives going towards the use of cover crops. And we find these are integrated in the organic system at high rates already. So when talking to policymakers, part of what we can what the takeaway we can have from this is that supporting organic agriculture and expansion of organic agriculture is a way of getting sustained higher rates of use of beneficial management practices. So production, so this is about yields, or this is about productivity. It's true, global studies tend to show between 10 to 25% yield gap, so lower yields in the organic system with wide variation. Of course, between regions, yields, and everything. Our case studies, so the data from those 4 sites show a wider, but around the same range yield gap, so between 6 to 47% lower, with a couple of exceptions. So one is the soybean yield. So these were including the ones at Harrow, I believe, which were actually slightly a little bit higher. But we can also see from some of the research sites that over time, the yield gap has narrowed. So for this applies to the one in Glenlee, for example, in Manitoba, because they've been tracking this yield data over a number of years. The yield gap narrows, of course, with the use of best practices and investment into research. So to us, this also points to an opportunity for more research that would be focused on productivity increase and management practices that contribute to yield stability and also yield increase. But also, we had a number of our researchers talking about the framing around the yield gap. So you'll see a little bit of that also discussed in the report, which is about reframing to say, oh, well, maybe we could think of organic yields as being 100%, which is achievable within ecosystem limits and planetary boundaries, and that we might actually be overproducing with a lot of imported inputs. in non-organic systems, most especially. So part of it is how we're looking at it type of question. So we did try to address a bit of that in the report that hopefully you'd find helpful, and we'd love to hear your thoughts about. But just to start to get into the policy recommendations from the report, so if that was kind of what are the impacts of organic, we then did a scenario of growth. So we looked at what would happen if we were to triple organic cropping acreage across Canada, and the additional impacts in all these areas we've looked at. So we looked, this is sort of in economic or just numbers of, size of the sector terms. We find that tripling organic cropping acreage, which would take it to over 77 million acres across Canada, which would be about 6.5% of farmland, from about 2 something where it is now. This would increase farm net returns by $1.73 billion over 10 years. So this is net returns staying in the farm economy, staying in farmers' pockets, and this is a significant number added up on a national level. We also made some assumptions about how many more producers would have to be producing organically in order to manage this expanded amount. So our assumptions include that some would come from existing organic farms expanding and being able to have access to transition support and extension support and all that kind of stuff to expand. And then we assume that quite a bit would be coming also from non-organic farmers entering into the sector. And so that's where you see the nearly 40% increase number. Our analysis shows that the change in total crop production of that set of crops that you saw earlier on, what tripling would do based on our yield data would change total crop production for those crops by less than 1.5%. On an environmental level, this would avoid GHG emissions of 769 kilotons of carbon dioxide equivalent annually. So there was an article written about this report recently that had said this would be the equivalent of taking 165,000 cars off the road every year, which was helpful for me to see. Just of, what is the impact of this in terms we can understand. But it would also contribute to impacts of reduced synthetic input use. So in terms of nitrogen fertilizer, we estimate almost 80 million kilograms of nitrogen per year, which is associated with a target that we have federally, which is 30% emissions reduction from nitrogen fertilizer by 2030 in Canada. And this tripling would contribute to about 15% of that overall target. So if you were to say, so this is just going from about 2% to 6%, if you were to scale that up to a larger level, you could see that expansion of organic agriculture meeting 100% of the fertilizer emissions reduction target, for example. So this is really an opportunity where growing organic production can lead on achieving some of these targets quickly, because reduced input use is one of the fastest ways to lead to reduced impacts from inputs. So it would also reduce pesticide use. Based on the data we have, we don't differentiate between what pesticides, but reduce overall pesticide use by 1.8 million kilograms of active ingredient per year, which is about 2% of current use, at the same time as boosting all of those benefits or co-benefits that we've talked about. So soil biodiversity, climate resilience, and within the frame of the gap that we have, better meeting demand, reducing reliance on imports, and also boosting exports, which are both goals. So coming out of this, we also find, okay, where does Canada sit right now in terms of investing into organic agriculture and food on a national level? So different provinces do have their own programs that they run to support the organic sector, which are different by province, but these numbers were calculated based on some support from the New Farm Center to do this policy analysis, to find that on a national level, based on federal policy frameworks and funds dedicated specifically to organic The United States is spending 8 times more per acre per year than we are. And this is on production and market development. And the European Union is spending on average 200 times more. That varies by country, but that's overall. And you can see there, Japan is also spending about 80 times more than we are. We did a couple of individual countries in the EU. Probably the top one for investing as much as you can in organic is Denmark. And Denmark is spending about 950 times more per acre per year than Canada is. And you might think, oh, that's a lot, but Denmark is an example of a policy approach that is using organic to meet climate goals, biodiversity goals, water goals, rural livelihood goals, and also public health goals. So it's spending on organic food and farming and not spending on a lot of other things because of that. So seeing it as a preventative measure in terms of public health, also seeing it as an investment in ecosystem services that prevents more having to be spent down the road. So you can really see that they call it also a Swiss Army knife of public policy. So it's concept of buying one tool and doing many things at the same time. So that's what that high number is. But even in the United States, the US has launched an organic transition initiative in 2022. This was actually done with funding that was from pandemic recovery funding. So it was about how do we build back better kind of concept, but also support small and medium-sized enterprises while we're doing it. So Canada is behind on a national level, and we are recommending with this report and also with the broader organic action plan, what would be needed to achieve, in this case, we've done the costing around what would be needed to achieve the tripling. So we find 68.5 million annual public investment, and that is to be shared between governments, federal, provincial, and territorial. So it actually breaks down quite a bit very quickly, but is a reasonable investment that could achieve quite a bit. So this is over a 5-year period, and you can already see the return is at least $1.7 billion in terms of additional economic return. So this would achieve lasting benefits for farmers, consumers, and the environment. There are a number of policy recommendations in the report that get at that try to get at what the barriers the research identified are. So the organic transition funding is a great example of that, and you can see this all broken down in the report, but it's basically proposing subsidizing the organic transition period and paying a portion of lost revenue during that period, and we've calculated how much it would take to achieve this tripling and to do that. So there's different amounts of funding that would be allocated based on what your production type is. So different for horticulture versus, for example, converting more broadacre field crops kind of thing. And quite a bit of this has been, the thinking around this proposal has also been informed by how they've done it in Quebec. And also other provinces and jurisdictions. Importantly, more agronomy and extension support, including for transitioning farmers, incentives for innovation and enhanced performance, and meeting this idea of continuous improvement on existing organic farms. We are recommending organic certification cost share, especially for small and medium-sized farms. This type of support is offered in subsidized in the US, for example, completely free in many other, especially European. So in Denmark, certification is free. And I know, many people in Canada would find that helpful, but also would find that kind of makes sense. So we're recommending some certification cost share, increased investment in organic research and seed breeding programs, improved risk management options. So this would include under the business risk management programs, including the crop insurance program, some support for new entrants. So making sure that support's available to organizations working on these issues, including providing land matching and connecting young farmers and new farmers coming into the sector with the opportunity to farm organically. Nationally, we're working on the issue of transparency. So having more access to comprehensive organic data which we don't have right now in Canada. And also, for sure, more stable domestic and export market opportunities through market and supply chain development. We find that every dollar invested in organic transition through this proposal yields nearly $8 in additional net returns for farmers. So just to wrap up, finally, this is all feeding into an organic action plan that was launched a couple of weeks ago by the Canadian Organic Alliance. So with OCO as a key partner, a lot of our recommendations feed into Pillar 1, so the ones I've just mentioned, which is about growing production. But this plan is looking at what other countries have done and the use of organic action plans, which is a proposal for a public-private situation. So it means we get together as a sector and identify priorities and work on them. So all of these here are some of those priorities. There are more, but we also ask the federal government and provincial and territorial governments to create an organic action plan that would be also a government initiative, which would be focused on helping to unlock and meet this organic opportunity that we have, but also addressing important challenges that we face also. So these are the partners we've launched the plan with. It includes our regional provincial partners, but also some sector-based partners, such as the Canadian Organic Seafood Association, and research partners, including the Organic Agriculture Centre of Canada. And we invite any and all others to join us now that we're moving into the implementation. So this finally just shows what happens when policy is put in place, policy that leads to programs, that leads to money, but also other things, coordination. So Quebec, at the beginning of the launch of the organic sector growth strategy, was right where that orange arrow is in terms of number of enterprises. So the red line is farms, and then the blue line is total organic operators, including processors. So a $9 million budget led to doubling the number of farms and businesses, doubling organic acreage ahead of time, and also doubling the number of products available on the market to consumers in Quebec and beyond. So policy works, and also coordinating the growth of organic markets and production is important, and that's a role for public involvement. So what we've been doing with this report and the action plan is presenting it to policymakers and presenting it to partners. We're also talking with provincial governments. So this is very important because agriculture is a shared jurisdiction in Canada. So we need the provincial governments to also be interested in this, in growing organic, in order for the federal government to also feel the pressure to act on it. So you can help with all of this. You can contact and meet with your elected representatives at all levels, and also ask for a strategy for organic and whichever investments work for you within what we've talked about. I know there's a lot. Host a farmer facility visit. We've had a few of these happen this summer that are really just helpful in showing elected representatives what organic production and marketing looks like in practice. Participate with OCO, which is working now on priorities within Ontario in the Organic Action Plan, and also share your farmer business story with any of us to tell us what's most needed or what would be most helpful, or if there's anything in there that actually would not be helpful for some reason. We also want to hear about that too. So that's it for now, and you can find the report and the appendices there on our website, as well as the Organic Action Plan on the website too. And there's my email if you want to get in touch.
Thank you so much, Katie. That was excellent. I feel like organic was a no-brainer since, we've kind of delved into, this naming in the 80s, 70s, right? Like it feels like it's been a no-brainer. But having a report like the task force report with the numbers makes all the difference in getting across that messaging. And so, first of all, it's amazing the work that the task force has put together, but it also just adds some huge leverage for us moving forward to say these are the outputs from organic farming, and it does make a difference. the ask of $68 million is nothing, right? That's like 68 houses in Toronto to have have this funded. Like think about that, right? Like it is not a huge number to have what was the number you gave? 1 point like 3 billion.
73 billion, yes.
Yeah, so if I'm an investor, that's an obvious amazing investment, right? So hopefully our government can see that and we can support our farmers in better ways. So we want to open this up now to questions. I did see some questions come in on the chat, so I'll start with those and then yeah, if you want to drop your questions into the chat there, it can do that. So the first question actually comes from Ruth Knight with Organic Consultant and one of our board members. And she says, do the case studies include actual measurements or modeling for emissions?
So the emissions results from the case studies are modeled based on modeling, not measurements. And this is partly so that we could do them all in the same way across the board. Some of the research sites, especially, have collected some direct measurements and are starting to do that more. So Glenlee has been putting more emphasis on collecting in-field measurements this year. Same thing with the CETAB site in Quebec. And there we have to compare, the difference between the modeled results and the direct measurement results. We used the HOLOS model to do this modeling too. So the HOLOS model is a model that Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada has come up with to estimate whole farm emissions. So we used that partly so that we could sort of interface easily with Agriculture Canada with the results of it. But the measured and modeled emissions are not usually the same. So there are definitely some limitations, yeah, to have and compare. So there's some limitations with the model. I think the research team had also gone through the process and found that there are some limitations with what the HOLOS model can capture in terms of the diversity of an organic or regenerative or very diversified farm. A lot of the data that's in those models is coming from kind of large scale, more simplified, maybe conventional situations. So there is more work to be done. The Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada team was very amenable to hearing from our group about the limitations they were finding to see if they can make improvements. But yes, there needs to be more. And good to have the comparison to make. Yes, Ruth, that's true. You can take a look in the environmental and emissions technical report to see what we included in there in terms of the comparisons we had.
All right. I am not sure. Here we go. Did everybody have that whiteboard come up? I'm trying to figure out how to turn that off.
Do you have your hand up, Ruth?
Yes, I do. And
Yep.
thank you so much for the work that you're doing, Katie. And I just want to add in a little bit of a different perspective because you did mention Denmark and perhaps their policy approach was a multi-prong approach. Like this study is very much towards the usual suspects that are involved in agriculture and most likely the most reticent to change their minds, where producers at the front end have a very challenging time in terms of having face to face with the eater. And so I'm thinking that Denmark had taken that multi approach in terms of talking to eaters, in terms of what their approach is, in terms of the demand side, if you want to put it in economic terms. So all of these other benefits, are broader social benefits, as opposed to just a production system. Is it maybe possible that that component would be an helpful addition if possible?
Yes, definitely. And that's where That's where I should have spent more time talking about the rest of the organic action plan. So I think for sure, this study focuses on the production side of it. And
Yes.
it was even the case with all the groups that were part of the Sustainable Agriculture Strategy saying, because Agriculture Canada was saying this is about production, and all the groups were saying, yes, but producers respond to market signals. So you have to have the market in there. So this is just our contribution into the broader organic action plan of what but a lot of the positive impacts do come from the farm level or from the landscape part of it. So that's what the study focuses on, but the whole organic action plan includes the demand side mechanisms that need to be put in place, or the pull mechanisms, if you want to put it as a push and the pull.
Yes,
The
I
market
did
is the
see it that
pull.
way.
Yeah. And so, yes, we worked a lot with looking at the example of what Denmark did. And it's very true that Denmark has focused on building the market, and while also putting all these production supports in place to reduce the risk of entering in and succeeding in organic production. But they have said, we really started to see things changing in the market when we focused on a couple of things: public procurement and engagement with retail. So Organic Denmark has had a huge strategy of engaging with retailers. So every retailer in Denmark will offer organic products, in many cases multiple. So you'll just stand there in the grocery store and look at like 6 different types of carrots, and you have 3 are organic and 3, for example, would be non-organic. So you have all these different price points, including the kind of like lower end organic option being cheaper than some of the other non-organic options. So they work on market development through retail, but also public procurement has been a huge driver. And Denmark now has 60% organic public procurement target. I think they also work on setting targets, which seems to be more I don't know, feasible maybe in the European context than here. Maybe or maybe not. Quebec has definitely worked with setting targets, but in public procurement, Denmark is 60%. Copenhagen is even 90%, and working on organic school meals, organic meals in hospitals, all that kind of stuff. So it's been a big driver. I think they say the public procurement, like the amount that is smaller, but they also find an indirect benefit, which is that it exposes people, including children, to organic food, which then later on, or just through exposure, influences your shopping decisions in the retail level. So yes, there's been a lot of work focused on that. And this is the work that the Canada Organic Trade Association is kind of leading or coordinating within the Organic Action Plan, is going to be work on public procurement and also retail engagement. And then all the like market development, supply chain type of coordination stuff.
So in transparency, is Denmark looking at this approach in terms of a public health perspective, as opposed to just an agricultural policy?
Partly, yes. Yes. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and seeing like in the public procurement example, this is public health values-based procurement. Definitely. The case has been made also in other countries. So the Netherlands has also had some modeling done on public health impacts of organic transition, find positive, even public health savings from transitioning the food system this way. So I think it's a great point you're making, Ruth, because it also means that we need to work with other departments. So we have to work with Health Canada. We have to work with Environment and Climate Change. We have to work with Natural Resources, jobs, all of that. So yes, definitely. And once we're done with getting this all out there, we will launch a new task force on health and nutrient density impacts. And that's so that we can go and speak to Health Canada with more credible information. Because it's really, I think we have found it's very helpful when you have this information all together in one place. to be able to have those conversations.
All right, well, we are reaching about the end of our time. I've got a couple of questions here in the chat. I think one's a really easy one is if you could forward any info on the Denmark model. So Katie will send us
Sure.
her slideshow, and then we can actually send out this link for that as well, if that works for you, Katie.
Yep,
Yeah, okay.
sure.
And then Carolyn has a couple of questions. I don't think they're directly related to the task force report, but definitely big issues in organic farming. And yeah, we do have issues with, adjacent farms that do have spray. We've actually been talking to a company called Field Watch, who is hopefully going to be moving into Ontario, but they are located already in Saskatchewan and Alberta and Manitoba, and this does allow them to talk to sprayers so that they know that there are organic farms nearby. So it's in terms of protecting those crops an important thing that needs to be done, and more can definitely be done about that. So not so much the task force report, and so I'm just gonna make sure with our limited time. Um, Broader distribution. Robert wants to know, how can we do a broader distribution of this to the general public?
That's a great question. If you have any ideas, we're happy to hear. I think we've been reaching to the media as well. So Ontario Farmer did a piece on this. There's one reporter there who's quite interested in these issues and has also offered, once you get some feedback about this or some traction on it, then come back and we'll talk about that too. But yeah, please, if you have other ideas, let us know.
All right. And Ruth has a question about the transitional market. I don't know if we can answer that in less than a minute. Do we need to do our closing slides here? So,
Yeah, that's a good question, Ruth. I think that depends on the willingness of buyers to buy transitional products, maybe partly. I know there's interest from some,
in
um,
Europe,
but
do we see transitional products being sold as, is there other markets that we see that in?
I'm not sure. I don't know the answer to that. I will have to look, but I think it's just there's different ways of financing the transition, and one of those would be with transitional organic contracts.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Katie. This has been excellent. And I feel like we probably will have more and more questions rolling in over time. So, Katie, if people wanted to ask a question, if you want to drop your email address into the chat there, and then people can send you a question directly. And then, Sammy, do you mind sharing those final slides just so we can wrap up here? So thanks so much, Katie. We do feel very honored that we can bring lots of these special speakers to you. And next week on Wednesday, November 26th at 1 to 2 p.m., we will have a panel talking about innovation. So, rooted in innovation, the future of organic research and technology. And we hope that you can join us for that. We have Haggerty Robotics, Food Cycler, and Green.
Velocity Green.
Velocity Green and Omafo will be joining us for that webinar. So we hope that we can see you there. And next slide there. For anyone who happens to be part of the post-harvest organic sector. So this is beyond our producers, but people that are involved in processing food and selling, retail food. We are actually doing a meetup on Monday in person at Riverside Natural Foods. We've sent out a lot of invitations, so if you've not received an invitation and you should have received an invitation, please reach out to us at info@organiccouncil.ca, or you can actually respond to any of the emails we've sent out about this talk today. And our next slide. of course, is the 2026 Guelph Organic Conference. So put it on your calendar. We're moving from the University of Guelph to the Guelph Farmers Market, and we are super excited. It's 2 days of trade show. We've got all sorts of workshops, and we're in a very rooted, bringing it back to the grassroots of building community within organics. So put it on your calendar. We'll have a reception with a panel and possibly music. We're hoping for that, and some different ways we'll be supporting the Guelph community as well. And so we will just be all together January 27th and 28th. So if you love organics, you love community connecting with people, you love good food, and you want to learn more, this is the place to be on January 27th and 28th. So we hope we see you there. And we're also still, I don't know if exhibitor applications have closed. They're getting really close if you have not applied to be an exhibitor. We're still going through applications, I believe. And we're also taking sponsors. So if you want to sponsor in various ways, we have all sorts of sponsorships available. All right. And um, next slide. Yep. If you didn't pick it up earlier, not for profit, we are completely funded um, by people helping and different grants that we do. So if you are not a member of the Organic Council today, and you think that the work we're doing is good and you'd like to support us, one of the ways that you can do that is by becoming a member. So we have everything from the people that just think we're doing great work, which is our organic advocates and our business, our producers, our allied associations, and of course, our impact partners. So we always thank those partners that are actually donating a portion of all of their sales right back to OCO so that we can continue doing the work that we're doing for you. And our next slide. All right, this is our feedback poll. Take a picture of it with your camera if you can. And you can also email us at membership at or at info@organiccouncil.ca with any feedback. The way we get better is by learning from what you tell us. And if you like something, we'd love to hear that. And if you'd like to see more of something, we want to know about that. And if we could do better, we want to know about that too. So please, please let us know. Thank you so much, Katie, for joining us today. Thank you for everybody who took the time to watch. And this will be up on YouTube as well. So if you missed anything, you want to see it again, it's usually a day or two till we get it back up onto YouTube, until we get it onto YouTube, but it will be there for you. So thank you so much, and hopefully we'll see you next week. All right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, Erica. Thank you, everybody.